The most dangerous thing about the lies some women tell is not the lie itself, but the way it is told. We do not lie in the same way men do. When a man lies, his body often betrays him before his words do. Visible tension, broken sequencing, avoiding eye contact, and a desperate attempt to stay composed. With women, however, the story is different. From an early age, we learn, consciously or unconsciously, how to conceal, how to soften the truth, and how to reshape reality in a way that is socially acceptable. Society does not only punish women for harsh honesty, it often rewards them for clever evasion. That is why lying for a woman is rarely blunt or crude. It is usually calculated narration, closer to a coherent story than to a simple false statement. Yet despite this skill, lies are not all the same. There are 3 fundamental patterns of lies a woman may fall into, and each leaves a distinct trace, a small psychological crack that an attentive observer can notice. No matter how well constructed a lie is, its formulation, word choice, what is said, and what is carefully avoided, all of it reveals more than it conceals. Sometimes it is not the sentence that exposes the lie, but the excessive justification. And sometimes it is not the mistake, but the exaggerated effort to appear innocent. In this discussion, I will explore each type of these lies calmly and honestly. I will provide real-world examples. I will explain the subtle psychological signals that accompany each pattern. And most importantly, I will draw attention to one critical point. Do not listen only to what a woman says, but to what she is trying to protect behind her words. If you feel that something is off, that the truth is being given to you in fragments, or that the conversation sounds right, but does not bring you peace, then this video is for you. Type 1. Unnatural transparency. When clarity turns into a tool for concealment. The most dangerous form of lying is not the one hidden behind denial or silence, but the one that wears the mask of honesty. In this pattern, a woman does not evade questions, does not hesitate, and does not become defensive. On the contrary, she appears calm, cooperative, and proactive in speaking. She does not wait to be asked, she volunteers information herself. She may say, for example, "There's a new guy at work. We interact with him a lot on the team and spend quite a bit of time discussing projects." Or, "I recently ran into an old classmate. We met by chance and talked a little about memories and work, nothing more." The conversation sounds natural, even reassuring. The mind immediately concludes, if there were something to hide, it wouldn't be mentioned at all. And that is precisely where manipulation begins. In this type of lie, the truth is not hidden, it is fragmented. The safe part is revealed, while the essential part is withheld. 20% of the picture is shown clearly, so you won't go looking for the remaining 80. Mentioning the man here is not accidental, it is deliberate. His presence is planted early in your awareness, so that it becomes familiar. If you later see him or hear his name from someone else, you won't be shocked. You'll think to yourself, "Yes, I've heard about him before." Psychologically, this tactic is known as hiding in plain sight. A narrative is constructed in advance, ready to be used later. In this pattern, the woman is not lying when she says, "I was honest with you." She truly was honest, but only in ways that did not harm her. What is concealed is not the person's existence, but the nature of the relationship, its depth, and its true boundaries. Signs of this type of lie. Repeated mention of the same person. His name comes up regularly without a clear reason, once in a work context, once as a joke, once as a casual anecdote. Excessively positive, polished language. Very easy to talk to, smart, kind, a bit like you. Carefully chosen words that don't raise suspicion, yet assign unnecessary emotional value. Indirect comparisons. Not meant to diminish you, but to neutralize the threat. You're actually quite similar, you'd get along if you met. As if saying, there's no competition, so don't worry. Apparent openness to disclosure. Maybe we can all meet sometime. A sentence that sounds transparent, but in reality falsely reassures you that there's nothing to fear. When transparency becomes excessive, it is not always a sign of honesty. Sometimes it is psychological groundwork, a ready-made excuse for the future. I told you about him before, you just didn't ask for the details. A genuinely honest woman does not repeatedly talk about the same man without reason. Either she doesn't mention him at all because he is insignificant, Or she mentions him once when necessary, and that's the end of it. Persistent repetition of the same details, however, is an alarm bell that should not be ignored. Type 2. Aggressive lying. When a question turns into a crime. In this pattern, the truth is not avoided through silence, but through attack. The woman does not discuss the question or attempt to explain it. Instead, she treats it as if it were a personal assault. A simple, neutral question is asked, one that carries no direct accusation. Yet the response comes charged, loud, and filled with disproportionate emotion. The reaction may sound like, "Why are you even asking me this? Are you monitoring me? Have I become the subject of an investigation?" Or, "After everything I do, you doubt me? That's unfair and insulting." Sometimes the response immediately turns into a counterattack. "And you? Where were you yesterday? Why didn't you answer your phone? Who were you talking to?" Or, it takes the form of psychological discrediting of the questioner. "You're overly suspicious. You exaggerate everything. You imagine things that aren't there." This is unhealthy jealousy. What is happening here is not a discussion, but a redirection of attention. The question disappears and is replaced by guilt, then self-defense, then an attempt to calm the situation. Within moments, the entire dynamic shifts. You are no longer the one asking, you are the one apologizing. And she is no longer required to answer. She has become the victim. This type of lying relies on a simple psychological rule. Emotional attack disrupts logical thinking. Instead of continuing your question, you become focused on restoring peace, avoiding conflict, and containing the anger. Why is this approach effective? Because many people prefer temporary peace over an unsettling truth. Sudden aggression plants an internal fear. If I ask again, everything will explode all over again. And so, the question itself becomes forbidden. Signs of this type of lie. Disproportionate emotional reaction. A simple question is met with intense anger, tears, or exaggerated emotionality, shifting the conversation to your flaws. Instead of answering, she begins listing your shortcomings, past mistakes, or questionable intentions. Accusations of jealousy or distrust. As if merely asking the question proves a moral or psychological defect in you. Manipulation of perception. Convincing you that the problem lies not in her behavior, but in your imagination, sensitivity, or pathological doubt. An honest person does not need all this noise. Innocence does not require hysterical defense, only a clear and calm answer. What is the real goal of this tactic? Not to convince you, but to silence you. When every attempt to understand turns into a battle, you will eventually stop asking altogether. The hysteria here is not a loss of control, it is a tool. A tool used to pull you off the path of reasoning, scatter your focus, and push you into retreat. And by the time the atmosphere finally settles, the question has already lost its importance, and the truth has once again escaped confrontation. Type 3. Detail-overloaded lying. When excess becomes evidence of concealment. One of the most common forms of lying, and one of the least noticed at first, is the kind that comes overloaded with unnecessary details. Not because details are inherently bad, but because their presence here is unnatural. The psychological rule is simple. A person who tells the truth keeps it brief, goes straight to the core, and feels no need for lengthy explanations. When there is lying, however, a hidden fear of gaps emerges, and those gaps are filled with words. A direct question is asked, "Where were you?" A natural answer might be, "I was with a friend. We talked for a bit." But in this type of lie, the response turns into a long narrative. The time of leaving, the place, the atmosphere, side details unrelated to the question, and events no one asked about in the first place. No one asked what was ordered to drink, how the weather was, or who passed by the table. Yet all of it is mentioned with precision. Why? Because the details here are not spontaneous. They are defensive. They are an attempt to construct a complete story in advance, leaving no gaps that could later be exploited. The lying mind thinks like this. If I say everything now, there will be nothing left to ask later. But this behavior produces the opposite effect. An excess of detail does not create reassurance. It creates a vague sense that something is fabricated. In this pattern, the woman is not lying simply to manipulate, but because she is afraid of being exposed. So she overexplains, believing that persuasion requires ornamentation, while the truth, by its nature, needs no decoration. Signs of this type of lie. The answer is far longer than the question. A simple question is met with an extended explanation, as if delivering an unnecessary presentation, mentioning functionless, marginal details, information that adds no meaning, side locations, minor descriptions, or facts irrelevant to the core of the story. Anticipating questions. Before the next question is even asked, the answer has already been supplied, as though following a pre-written script. Artificial consistency of details. The story is told almost the same way every time, as if memorized. An honest person does not fear silence, nor feel compelled to fill every pause with words. They say what happened and then stop. A lie, however, fears stopping, because stopping opens the door to questions. How do the three types of lying intertwine? What makes this even more complex is that these patterns are not always used in isolation. They often alternate depending on the situation. A casual question, unnecessary, and excessive details. A direct question, emotional reaction, or defensive attack. No question at all, proactive, suspicious honesty. And this is how you end up mentally confused. Each response seems logical on its own, yet the full picture leaves you feeling uneasy. The common sign across all types. Lack of naturalness. When a person is truthful, their behavior is simple. They don't add, exaggerate, anticipate questions, or try to manage your impression of them. Lying, on the other hand, always needs something extra. Extra details, extra emotions, or extra honesty. What should you do when you suspect deception? Don't confront immediately. Early confrontation only improves the performance of the lie. Observe repetition, not a single incident. Examine the small details, they are the first to collapse. Ask later, not in the same moment. And most importantly, trust that inner feeling that has no words, yet is rarely wrong. In the end, ask yourself one honest question. Do you want a relationship where you must analyze every sentence just to feel safe? Because a relationship built on doubt, even if the truth is unclear, is an exhausting relationship. Only complete honesty brings peace, not excessive talk about it. The ability to lie is not a sudden trait in women. It is a skill acquired early. Not because women are inherently more deceitful, but because the social environment trains them from childhood to avoid confrontation, even at the expense of truth. From her earliest years, a girl learns that blunt honesty may provoke anger, while softening words saves the situation. That saying the truth as it is can create tension, whereas rephrasing it makes things easier. With repetition, this behavior shifts from simple social politeness into a ready psychological tool used when needed. But lying, no matter how clever or justified it appears, is not chaotic. It has a clear structure. It has recurring patterns. And it has signals that can be noticed by those who pay attention. The picture becomes clearer once we recognize the three core types. Excessive detailing. Drowning the conversation in details out of fear of not being believed. Aggression and accusations, where a question turns into a threat and the discussion is aborted before it even begins. Unnatural honesty, where part of the truth is deliberately revealed to conceal its essence, hiding in plain sight. Knowing these patterns does not mean constant suspicion. It means awareness. Listen to what is said, yes, but pay closer attention to how it's said, its timing, its intensity, and what is exaggerated or pushed off the table. And do not underestimate that inner feeling that lacks concrete evidence. Intuition often detects contradiction before the mind can name it. Finally, remember, relationships are not built on constant analysis or perpetual caution. If you feel you are being psychologically managed rather than treated with honesty, this is not about your ability to understand. It is about your limits of acceptance. Protect your awareness, and do not allow anyone to steer your perception instead of you. Have you encountered one of these patterns in a personal experience? Or do you believe there are other signals worth mentioning? The discussion is open because this subject is far too complex to be reduced to a single answer.